Before Rani Lakshmibai, before 1857, there was another queen who faced the British Empire and won. Her name is missing from most history books. But today, you will know the story of Rani Velu Nachiar. Velu Nachiar was born in 1730 in the kingdom of Sivaganga in the present-day state of Tamil Nadu. Her father was Raja Mahawindam, a petty king in the vast and complex Chola kingdom. Unlike most princesses of her time, Velu Nachiar was not taught traditional arts like singing and dancing, or the more practical ones like cooking and weaving. No, Velu Nachiar was different. She wasn't interested in these things. Instead, she wanted to learn swordsmanship. She wanted to learn archery, horse riding, and the art of war. Now, this was not acceptable for a young girl. In fact, it was unheard of. But Velu Nachiappan's father was progressive. He encouraged his daughter's interest and provided her with the best teachers in the kingdom. Thus, by the age of 16, Velu Nachiar became one of the most skilled warriors in the whole of South India. She also learned many languages. While most royals of her time knew only Sanskrit, Velu Nachiar knew Tamil, Urdu, French, and even English. In fact, she was so fluent in English that she could read and write it backwards. But in 1772, darkness fell. The British, allied with the Nawab of Arcot, attacked Shivaganga. Her husband, King Muthu Vajiganatha Thevar, was killed in battle. Velu Nachiappan was given the option to surrender, but she refused. Carrying her infant daughter in one hand, she escaped into the thick forests of the Western Ghats while her kingdom burned. Soon, her enemies found her and offered her a deal. Surrender and you will be allowed to keep your life. But Velu Nachiappan refused once again. So the British imprisoned her, torturing her body and mind. They kept her locked up for 2 years, hoping that she would break, but Velu Nachiar didn't. She waited patiently, plotting her revenge. The British were arrogant. They never thought that Valancheri would rise against them. They returned her to the throne, thinking that they had won. But Valancheri had other plans. She spent the next 8 years in exile, training in secret, forging alliances, and building an army. It was an impossible task, but Velu Nachiar was up to it. She established a network of spies. She reached out to everyone who had suffered at the hands of the British, gathered a huge force of soldiers, and created India's first ever all-women regiment. Each soldier was trained by Velu Nachiar herself. She drilled them day and night, turning them into an unstoppable force. Her spy network informed her of the British movements, their strengths and weaknesses. Velu Nachiar studied them, planning her next move. Meanwhile, the British were growing weaker. By 1780, the Nawab of Arcot had died, leaving his successor too weak and inexperienced to hold the alliance. This was Velu Nachiar's chance. She was finally ready to strike back. Her army advanced on the British post. The soldiers opened fire, but Velu Nachiar's men were prepared. She had ordered that the bullets be soaked in water, making them blunt. The plan was risky, but it worked. Velu Nachiar's men entered the fort. The British inside panicked. They retreated into the arsenal, locking the doors behind them. That's when Quili made the ultimate choice. She was a warrior with a very special assignment. She took a pitcher full of oil, lit a flame, and charged straight into the gunpowder store. The blaze destroyed the British weapons, opening the gates for the rest of Velu Nachiar's army. Finally, the British inside surrendered. When the dust settled, Velu Nachiar stood tall. She had won. In the next 5 years, she recaptured all of her lost territory and reestablished her kingdom. She also made sure that the British never attacked her again. She ruled for 10 more years, spending her time improving the lives of her people, building schools, hospitals, and temples. She also played an active role in temple rituals. Even today, many consider her to be the reincarnation of goddess Parvati. Now, this is where things get interesting. You see, the British had underestimated Velu Nachiappan. They never thought that she would defeat them. And because they didn't know how to pronounce her name, they named her Black Mary, a nickname that stuck. For the next 2 centuries, British officials referred to Valu Nachiar as Black Mary, but the British were not the only ones who forgot her name. Over the years, most Indians did the same. In fact, Valu Nachiar faded from most history books, despite being the first Indian queen to defeat the British in battle. Why did this happen? Well, history remembers those it chooses to, not those who deserve to be remembered. I mean, just think about it. Everyone knows Ashoka the Great, but few have heard of his son Punika, who ended the Mauryan Empire. Everyone knows Akbar the Great, but few have heard of his son Jahangir, who massacred 40,000 Rajputs. Everyone knows Shivaji, but few have heard of his son Sambhaji, who was killed by the Mughals. History remembers those it chooses to. So why do you remember Valu Nachiar today? Why are you listening to her story after all these years? Well, that's because you chose to click on this video. You chose to listen to her story. And in doing so, you have ensured that history remembers Valu Nachiar. Today, her story will be told through generations thanks to you. It's unfortunate, but history has treated Valu Nachiar so unfairly. After all, she was a warrior queen, a visionary leader, a master strategist, a symbol of Indian pride. Valu Nachiar was all of this and more. She personified the spirit of India, the spirit that refuses to be cowed. You see, the British East India Company was at the peak of its power when Valu Nachiar defeated it. In fact, 1780 was a turning point in India's history. Until then, the British had been on the defensive. They had suffered a series of defeats at the hands of Indian rulers, Marathas, Sikhs, Afghans, and others. But after 1780, the tables turned. Indian rulers started losing. One by one, they fell to the British. And within 75 years, the entire subcontinent was under British rule. So why did Indian rulers lose? Well, for starters, they couldn't unite. Secondly, they lacked modern weaponry and technology. And thirdly, they refused to learn from their mistakes. Let's take the Marathas, for example. After winning the Third Battle of Panipat, they should have consolidated their gains, regrouped, and attacked the Mughals again. But instead, they kept fighting amongst themselves, thus allowing the British to gain the upper hand, or take Mysore, for instance. After Tipu Sultan's death, the British should have crushed the kingdom, but they made the mistake of signing a treaty with them, giving the Mysoreans breathing room to regroup. Same with Valu Nachiappan. After defeating the British in 1780, she should have consolidated her power, strengthened her alliances, and expanded her kingdom, but she didn't. Instead, she wasted her time playing charades and rituals. She dressed up like a man and fought in battles, which led to her losing her throne in 1790. Now, some people will say that Valu Nachiar had no option. After defeating the British, she was left with no allies. The Nizam of Hyderabad and the Maratha king were fighting in the north. The Mysoreans were busy consolidating their gains. So Valu Nachiar was left alone. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe Valu Nachiar had no option but to play the British game. After all, she was just a small ruler in a vast and complex web of kingdoms. But then again, maybe she did. Perhaps she realized that her time had come. Perhaps she knew that she had lived long enough. Perhaps she wanted to spend her last years in relative peace. We don't know what went through her mind. All we know is that she died in 1796, giving up her throne and her life. Rani Valu Nachiar, the warrior queen of Shivaganga, the first Indian queen to defeat the British, the inspiration behind the film Queen Padmavati, a legend that history chose to forget, but you chose to remember. Now, I want to ask you a question. What do you think Valu Nachiar's biggest strength was? Was it her martial skills, her strategic brilliance, or her determination to free India from the British? Let me know in the comments. Also, If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button. It will help us grow and reach more history lovers like you. And finally, if you haven't already, please subscribe. There's a lot more to come.